Hello again. For those who know me, I'm Kelly. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Kelly Williams. I'm the chair of Nantucket by Design. I'm thrilled to see all of you here. For those of you who were here this morning, you know I was a little late. I was a little overserved last night. I won't say by whom, but anyway. But Pietro Ciccagnani and Chessie Breen were dynamite this morning. Isabella Rossellini called in on her cell phone. It was a hoot. And she said she's just hanging out in her kitchen and call her back if we needed to. But it was charming. And thank you for all of you who came in on this gorgeous morning. I joked that Stacy Stewart and Johanna Richard had done a little dance in the parking lot to get the rain to go away. And it worked. But we are thrilled to see everyone, and we know this is one of the most awaited events during our Nantucket by Design Week, our all-star designer panel. Steele Marcoux, who is our fan favorite, who has been moderating this for a number of years. As you know, she's the editor-in-chief of Veranda magazine, who has been our media partner really since the beginning of Nantucket by Design. Yay. Fabulous partner. And, you know, in addition to being, I think, you know, one of the best editors around in terms of homes and interiors, she has a real passion for what's important to us here on Nantucket, which is historic preservation. Now, that shouldn't be a surprise knowing that she has a degree in art history from Williams and a master's in American history from University of Alabama. So she's, not only is she an enthusiast, she's a scholar. But with that, let me turn it over to my dear friend, Steele Marcoux, and our all-star designers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you very much for welcoming Veranda and myself back to Nantucket. I couldn't be more thrilled to be here this year in person once again. It's one of my favorite places, and not the least of which is because there is such a value here in history, historic preservation, and of course, antiques. So I want to welcome you all here again today and also introduce the topic of our panel and our esteemed panelists. We're going to be diving into the theme of renewal, which is the theme for the entire Nantucket by Design event, and specifically renewal at home. It's been so interesting, I think, as all of us have spent more time at home over the last 18 to 24 months to experience renewal in our own homes and even with our family and friends' homes when we've been able to get out and see people. And then also to witness what that has done to renewal within the home design industry itself. So I'm thrilled and very honored to have these three experts here to discuss those ideas with us today. Before I introduce them, I'm just going to give you a little overview. We're going to talk about renewal at home. Then each panelist is going to share what I'm calling a case study, a project from his or her portfolio that really sort of exemplifies these ideas. And then we're going to take a few questions from the audience. So I'm going to dive into some introductions of our wonderful panelists. And thank you all three for joining us today. I'm going to start with Philip Gorrivan, who is all the way to the far right of the stage. Philip is a New York-based designer who was raised in Maine by a French-Moroccan mother and a New England father. I love this background. Yes, exactly. I think it's you can see it in your work. You've got a real sort of reverence for history and for classical design, but also with a little bit of a global beat thrown in there, which makes things really interesting. So I'm excited to see and talk more about that. Also, for those of you who don't know, Philip has a beautiful project featured in this month's issue of Veranda. So please take a look at that if you have not already. Next to, let's see if I can get this right, to Philip's left? No, to Philip's right. We have Joy Moyler. Joy is also a New York-based designer. And I would be remiss if I did not point out that she is our design columnist and contributor at Veranda magazine. She has a recurring story with us every issue in which she interviews someone from the design industry who brings a unique perspective. Joy, I told Joy this over Christmas and New Year's at the end of 2020, but I can say without a doubt that Joy Moyler was the best thing that happened to me in 2020. making friends with you and developing a friendship over the telephone and over Zoom was truly one of the bright spots of my year. So I'm thrilled that we've become good friends and to have her celebrated in each issue of Veranda. And Joy also has an amazing background with, deep roots in New York, which I love, but a real passion for global design as well. Joy's passion for design really got started when she studied abroad in Spain as a teenager. And then she went on to study architecture. And she has worked at many esteemed design firms, including Ralph Lauren, Giorgio Armani Home, and of course, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. This is all before launching her own design firm. And now has projects all over the world, one of which you're going to see today. Last but not least is Philip Mitchell, who's joining us from Nova Scotia. He's a Canadian designer based in Toronto and New York. And he is at his home in Chester, Nova Scotia today. I want to do a small little plug. Philip's home was on the cover of Veranda 2 years ago, and it is one of the most popular homes that we've ever featured in the magazine. Loved by everyone, including the one and only Drew Barrymore, who posted it on her Instagram feed last week, just days before Philip announced that the house is for sale. I don't know if it's still on the market or if it's already been snatched up, but it really is one of the most beautiful houses. Philip is known for his deeply personal design and warmth, as well as his reverence for antiques and history and collecting as well. So without further ado, I'd like to dive into our discussion, and thank you all for joining me today. So when talking about renewal, the first question I wanted to ask the three of you is, what does renewal at home mean to you? And how can interiors provide a sense of renewal for us as individuals? I'll call on Philip Gorrivan first.
So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is giving your home. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Giving a space new life, right? So it's refreshing it in different ways. It might be changing the design up a little. It might be also adding design elements that increase, give you more function at home.
And function is so important for renewal because it can change how you engage with your home,
right,
and of course how you feel when you're at home.
Right. And I think also it's about adapting to today's way of living.
For sure.
So if you have an antique house, I think it's important to maintain the authenticity and think about the house and what it is, but also, again, you're living in it, and houses are living things, just like anything else.
They're changing.
They're always changing, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Joy, what does renewal at home mean to you?
For me, it's about changing the mood, changing the vibe of the space. And I think that the way you move through your home, the influences that you might pick up and develop via music and travel and sort of those sort of things always create newness. And, they say that every 7 years, your body chemistry changes.
That's amazing.
I think your design chemistry and the mood of your home changes in the same capacity. Maybe it isn't 7 years. Maybe it's just something that you're inspired by a trip or your mental state or the passing of someone you love. I think that those sorts of things affect the way that you see your home and how you approach renewal.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's, again, something that we've all experienced over the last 18 or so months. Philip, what about you? What is renewal at home? What does it come to mean to you, especially over the last 18 to 24 months?
I think that there's something to do with the fact that, when you take something that's old, that sometimes people don't necessarily think can move forward so easily, and people often are looking for something new. And I think that people forget that there are so many amazing things about the old that we can rework to make, relevant for today. And at the end of the day, it's something about taking, again, like a little bit of what everybody said, taking a little bit of new life and interjecting that into something. And, there's also a sustainable factor that ties into that as well, where you can take something that's beautiful and old and show people that you can actually make that into something that's totally livable for today, totally comfortable, completely upgraded with, all the mechanicals that you need today and all of the mainstay things that everybody comes to expect with sort of new construction. You can still have that in something that's old and be able to sort of move it forward.
We're going to be looking at your own personal home a little more closely here in a minute, but is there a specific space within your home, Philip, that has provided you with a sense of renewal? And I really do mean even sort of spiritually or emotionally over the past 18 months.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been looking at a situation where, everybody has been sort of having a whole new experience with their own homes, ourselves included. And for me, I've been unbelievably lucky to be able to sort of be in a location that is not only incredibly inspiring, but that we've had to sort of, rework to make work for ourselves also. We've taken what was a vacation home and a painting studio that was my husband Mark's and turned that into an office that we both share, that we both use, and have learned to, adapt that space to move it forward also in a way. And sort of luckily enough, we designed the house to be flexible enough to be able to do something like that. So for us, it's been an amazing gift to be able to sort of understand and spend the time in our house to even sort of tweak it a little bit more to make it, that much more usable for us.
That's amazing. What about the two of you? Have you found yourselves engaging with your homes in a different way or different patterns of how you spend time or where you kind of move throughout the house over the past few years?
I definitely, when you, like in the past year, when you spend a lot of time in your house, you discover things that you never discovered before, like little details and just little idiosyncrasies. But I guess the past year has definitely been an opportunity to really get to know my space.
I find myself chasing the light. I'm, there are parts of the day that I didn't realize because I was not home during those parts of the day. Yeah. And so I'm going, I want to be over here. And I never spent time in that corner before.
But I think the more time you spend in your house, the more you want to change it.
Well, that's true too.
That's true too. There's always something else you can do.
More renewal. Just calls
more
for
renewal. Exactly. Everlasting renewal.
Of course. Everlasting renewal is the ultimate pursuit. Joy, let's talk about renewal within the design industry as a whole, because my understanding is you all have never been busier. You've never been in greater demand. As we've been saying, we've all been at home. We're all seeking out renewal at home. So what sort of changes has that brought about in your own business, in your own profession that you've been observing?
Well, I find that every time I am able to get on a plane, I'm fully restored. My space in my home that I find the most renewal, I must admit, is the bathroom. I think best when I'm in the shower. I'm constantly inspired. The water bill reflects that.
Yes.
And without being able to get on a plane in the last year, a lot of my inspiration has come from making, sort of a bouquet garni full of sage and rosemary and hanging it in the shower. And I've even gone so deep as taking cardamom pods and don't use turmeric, but, and hanging it from the shower and really feeling like I'm being restored by, being on a trip to India or Spain or whatever.
That is so clever.
Because, if you can't get on the plane and experience that sort of inspiration, you have to create it
and engage the senses
and engage it. And I could sit at my desk and look at fanciful, delightful imagery, but that's not affecting my sensory at all.
Right.
But getting in that shower with that steam and standing there under the water and closing your eyes with a little candlelight is ever transporting.
I love that idea.
I feel like a lot of us did that last year. Like for instance, we on my front porch in Connecticut, we created like a whole Tulum moment.
I love that.
With baskets, and just because we couldn't be there, so bring Tulum to you. And it's the same, Turkey, or bring any different parts of the world to your dining table, or like when you're entertaining.
I love that.
I think was so important last year.
Charlotte Moss told me room travel. Go to a different room and create a new moment, and it's you've left your world completely and gone to another, which I love.
But most of my projects are in Europe, so it's it affected my business with that sort of capacity of not being able to get on a plane every 2 weeks.
That's
But
very difficult.
so, you kind of have to deep dive and look for inspiration and
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
work on projects and hustle other ways.
That makes sense. Philip, I wanted to ask you about creativity and renewing your own sense of creativity, kind of what Joy is saying,
Right.
without the ability to, go to markets and travel to different cities for inspiration. How have you maintained your own level of creativity?
I would say probably it's just getting in touch with nature.
Mm.
Whether it's going to Vermont and hiking or skiing, going out, skiing out in the Rockies. I know. I find for me, Mother Nature is the best designer.
I love that.
I often get a lot of inspiration and recharged, and also it's just even like the color combinations. And I always resort to Mother Nature to get recharged. I think for my design.
Philip, not to leave you out of the conversation, we had spoken earlier about colors from nature and how truly, it really is the best place. And again, we'll see this in a moment, but what about for you? Have you found inspiration in nature over the last few years?
I would say, yeah, definitely. Nature is definitely an inspiration for us. I think for us, especially during the pandemic, because of, the situation, the fact that people really can't travel and you sort of can't go about doing what you typically would do. We've really sort of always been big proponents of craft, handmade things, local things. And so now we've sort of, rediscovered a lot of incredible talents locally, a lot of amazing people that can do incredible things within our region here in Eastern Canada. And it's nice to be able to sort of develop those and see those relationships and see what people are creating to inspire you also. So it's sort of a different avenue, but it's definitely something that we have really been sort of developing further since we've been here.
I think that's such a good point to make, especially while we're all here celebrating Nantucket design, because Nantucket is at once this very global place, kind of a crossroads, with the shipping history. And yet at the same time, there's this real pride in local craftsmanship. So you see, antiques from all over the world here, but also truly local craftsmanship, which I love seeing those two things come together in one place. It's really beautiful. Okay, let's dive into our case studies next. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. And we'll start with Joy. Next slide, please. Joy, tell us a little bit about this project, this house, where it is and its history.
This project is located about 40 miles northwest of London. It's in Middlesex, Stanmore. It is a home that was built in 1810. It was broken down, labeled, and shipped to its current location,
Wow.
I think in 1897 or something like that.
Wow.
And it's a really beautiful structure. It was somewhat intimidating when I first started on the project because my client said, I've just inherited this little cottage and I really just love, because we were actually in the midst of working on a project in Paris, and midway he says, okay, let's change of plan. We'll get back to that later. My father died and I've got this little cottage that I love for you to work on. And so we drove probably 35 minutes outside of London. We were passing all these little houses,
Cottage.
What I discovered with that was that they were the outer buildings to the property. And we finally drove up to this thing. And I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be fun. Because, I've worked on, large homes before, but never of this sort of historic sort of, A1 listed London
Wow.
heritage projects, which come with a whole ball of wax of requirements that need to be approved by Her Majesty's,
Wow.
committee and that sort of thing. So it was really, really interesting. So this ended up being like a 3.5-year project.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So
And
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what were your clients what was the directive to you?
The directive was make it a home for a young couple with 18-month-old twins, and it's an old sort of storied home, very sort of English Renaissance with Italian Gothic influences, from late 1500s to 1600s, and just massive timber. And the challenge was truly to make something so storied, so old, that literally I think the timber was talking to me as I'm walking through the house because it's creaking so much, and just kind of modernize it and freshen it up for a young family.
Incredible.
Yeah. So all of my architectural background definitely came into play beyond the decorative layer of working on the home.
Let's step inside.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. The home was originally the summer cottage of Alfred Dunhill, the tobacconist. And I'm not a smoker, but I've always loved their packaging. So that excited me tremendously. And so, it's just, the house just creaks and it has a real personality, and just walking through it and getting a sense of who he was and how he related to this home at that time and its new relationship to the new family, I found really, really interesting.
Amazing.
Next slide. This would be, I guess, the 1900s version of sending someone a text to say we're home. So that when Mr. Dunhill and his wife were in residence, the staff would slide the little button over to say that they're in, so that they knew that they couldn't service the private quarters of the home.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And it's at the front door.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Next slide.
This is stunning.
The great room. It's got, bunch of adorning the timber at the stair are, some typical English Renaissance grotesque figurines, very appropriate for the style of the home. Again, English Renaissance use of stained glass and some Italianate details as well, with plaster details and moldings throughout the home. But the timber is massive. The wood floors, of course, are all original from, the early 1800s, I guess. And how they labeled this home and restructured it on site is, I don't even know how they did it. I'm sure that there's a hiccup in there somewhere that no one's discovered yet. But, rumbling around this house, this is the main structure. There's the house has 30 rooms.
Wow.
And you just roam from room to room to room, and they all have their own little idiosyncrasies and sort of secret passages, which is really interesting. And my client always insisted that I stay in the main house, and I always wanted to stay at the guest house. But, you don't even get a sense that anyone else is ever in the house, which I think has its pluses and minuses, because I swear the house, somebody died in there at some point. I don't know who, but I know there's somebody dead rumbling around in those halls. I just haven't seen them, and they haven't introduced themselves. And I'm quite happy with that.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
You talk about the scale of the timbers and the building itself, and yet, looking at a photo like this, or if I remember correctly, what's on the next slide, the furnishings, I may have jumped ahead too quickly, but the furnishings themselves feel very much scaled for life today, contemporary life.
Except for that little Chesterfield sofa, which they insisted on keeping. And I was just like, that's way out of scale, But the previous owner of the home was Robert Stigwood, who is the manager for the Bee Gees.
Amazing.
And that sofa remained in the home. There's a picture of the Bee Gees in front of the stained glass window. Again, there's an example of one of those little grotesque figurines enhancing the stairway. Which there are quite many of those. And it was just really kind of, it has a real sense of history. And within those walls, I can only imagine, the parties that were given with Elton John dancing on the piano and playing the piano with Robert Stigwood and the Bee Gees and all these Britons, of the English musical language who, came to enjoy the home.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. Again, this is part of that very English Renaissance architecture and wood paneling. And we tried to sort of soften the home by using some of that wicker and pleated Robert Klein decorative lamps. And I think that's the only project of mine you'll ever see with a chopped pillow, which I did not do. The stylist did that for Simon Upton. Oh, anyway.
I know it's, maybe we should advance.
Advance gives me the twitches.
It's making her uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
Next
slide, please.
Next slide.
Okay.
So this is the image that it's one of my all-time favorite rooms from this project.
That's the Lee Joffa room.
Oh.
And it's just everywhere. You know, it was a way to soften a very hard room. It's probably a little too feminine for my client, but he didn't complain. So, you know, we wanted to be a soft, comfortable home for people who come and visit. It's just a weekend house anyway. So, you know, we'll probably change it in about a year and a half or something if he can't stand looking at all of those florals.
It just feels so English, though. It feels
very
like
English.
a nod to its roots and to its sense of place.
Yeah, and that was the directive. And I've done 3 projects for him, and every project we've worked on together is representative of its geography. So the New York residence is very much an urban residence. I'm working on a project for them now in Portofino, and it's, you know, sort of a modern Italian project as well. And this is English in the English countryside, and so it should look that way.
It should.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. So that's another view of the same room.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did your client have a collection of antiques to furnish?
Oh, yeah. And it was really crazy the day Sotheby's came through and we wanted them to catalog and sort of appraise some things that were left behind. We found so many pieces.
Very cool.
And a lot of them are in storage on the property. And I just want to go in there at midnight, you know, maybe bring some things home in my purse.
Bring a big purse.
I wonder if they would ever notice. But one of my roles also with this particular client has always, he says I'm a concierge because I arrange everything for the family in terms of when they need a chef, I arrange that and all sorts of things. So he's always entrusting me, trust being the measurable word, of course,
Yes.
and the most important word with all of their pieces. So he knows everything's safe with me.
A lifestyle concierge. That's good.
Move along. I don't want to take up too much time. Next slide, please. That's the breakfast patio. It's just beautiful slate, very, you know, we found these vintage wickers and that
Fabulous.
large pleated lantern, which is a floor lamp actually,
I love
that hangs over the breakfast
Oh,
table.
yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that I really love. Next. That's one of the children's bedrooms. And, you know, the use of the timber can often be very hard, very heavy. So I think it's pertinent in a children's room in particular to sort of use softening elements. So you'll see the ruffle there, very soft furnishings. And, you know, you get to have fun in a kid's room.
For sure. Renewal of the timber itself.
Renewal. And, you know, that's the real key. He asked me to refresh this house for a young couple.
I love that.
And I think compared to what was in this room, it's much softer. It was harsh. It was dark. It was
Heavy.
hunter green felt on the walls and loads of brass. And so this is definitely a refresh for them. And it won't scare the kids to death, you know.
No
Yeah.
haunted house here.
The haunted house. Next slide.
Oh, so beautiful.
We laughingly call this the Madonna room for obvious reasons. You know, and I really detest that painting, but you know, it's not my house, it's someone else's, right? So again,
With the
you know,
textile.
you know, and that's the thing when you work with the client, you know, you're doing what they want, not what you want. And it goes all the way down to the artwork as well. But I think it's a lesson in breastfeeding, and not necessarily an art piece, but art is about the beholder, right?
That's right.
Yes. Next. This is one of the bathrooms, and it's just very English. It's very soft. Brits love carpet in the bathroom. And I will never, ever, ever understand that. To me, it's the most unsanitary thing that you can absolutely do. And the fact that it's a light, creamy, dreamy color is just even more insane to me. So I literally ordered an additional something like 5,000 square meters of carpet for attic stock, because that's just going to get replaced constantly.
I'm sure.
Yes. Next.
This is one of my favorites.
This is, it's one of the smallest bedrooms in the house. And it's my favorite because it's just simple. It's dreamy. It's not an overuse of timber. You just see the textiles. It's sort of very welcoming and overlooks the rear garden and the horse stables. And well, on a bad day, I guess that horse stable whiff maybe not be the best thing, but just to have that beautiful light coming in, and it's just a very relaxing, peaceful room.
What's amazing to me about this room, but also the entire project, is it looks fresh, certainly, but it also feels like it could have always
It could
been
be
there.
anywhere,
And it could have always been there, even
Yeah.
though it doesn't feel dated or heavy or tired. It's just, it's really impressive. I know you treaded that line very carefully.
I think, ticking just goes a long way.
True.
Yeah. Who doesn't love blue and white?
Classic.
Next slide.
Ugh.
And that again is the exterior, part of the exterior of, the first thing that was absolutely daunting to me when I saw this house was all of the chimneys. I
Yes.
thought, how many fireplaces are in this house? And Lyle and Umbach is going to just drive me crazy getting all of these irons and screens. But, that certainly wasn't the biggest portion of the project. But yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and there's still work to be done, and it's not complete yet.
I would imagine a project like that is it's always ongoing.
Always ongoing. He said,
Yes.
prepare to be here for the next 50 years. So I'm taking my vitamins. So, yeah.
Good. Wonderful. Well,
I think
thank you.
that's it.
Thank you. I think next is
Thank you.
let's see. Next is Philip Gorrivan's project. So here we are.
So you were looking down there,
Oh,
but I think I need to look this way. So
I've
I
been looking-
apologize.
Yeah, apologies.
Because I'm on an angle.
Mhm.
So I was thrilled to be asked to participate today in this panel, especially since I have this project in your July-August issue, but also with regard to this house, the whole concept of renewal has been on my mind
Absolutely.
quite a bit, because this house, it's in Washington, Connecticut. It's in my neighborhood. And it was built in the 1750s. It's probably one of the oldest houses in the area. There's a few others. There's a cluster of houses that are all dating from the 1750s. It's where a lot of the original settlers went when they came to Litchfield County.
Amazing.
But it's also a house that I've passed numerous times, and over the years, it just slowly was getting in more and more disrepair and dilapidated. And I mean, even the roof was leaking, and it was in really bad shape. And finally, my neighbor bought it, and I've worked with them on several projects. I was actually working on their other house across the street, and he asked me to help him with the house, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to try to save something that, obviously the architecture is very special. It's and to try to maintain the integrity of the architecture and the design, but at the same time, they wanted a house that would be suitable for the next 100 years.
It's so important.
Beyond, like, for generations in the
Yes.
future. So
Not just the immediate gratification.
not just the immediate, but just a house that, again, would stand the test of time. And I thought it was just a really wonderful opportunity to do something like this. And I've not actually, although I grew up, as you mentioned earlier, I grew up in Maine, and I'm very familiar with historic houses. I haven't actually worked on too many historic renovations. So this was also an academic process as well, just doing a lot of research on colonial homes. So this is the entry, and my main goal initially was just to try to preserve every last piece of whatever I could find in the house that was still salvageable, and that included the front door and a lot of the hardware. And
look at those floorboards.
The floor, those are, well, some of the floors are original to the house, and I also, when I was sourcing materials, tried to get everything locally. So the whatever's not in the house, we sourced, from a local. It's antique timber from other houses that were in the neighborhood. So I really wanted to try to make this, preserve this, and maintain the integrity as much as possible. Next slide. And here you'll see this is when I wish I had pictures before, like just the before of the house, because it really, there was stuff growing in it.
Oh my gosh.
Plants, it was leaking. It really was in bad shape. And I wish I had photos of it, but this is sort of during process. And my team and I, we restored all the whatever existing hardware. So this is all 18th century hardware that was on the house. We had everything refinished, restored. There's you have to come when you're doing construction like this. You have to comply to for permitting. There's a lot of rules, and one of the things that they weren't going to allow us to do is to keep the old staircase. That was going to have to get removed. So instead of removing it, we put a staircase in the back of the house, so it could be to preserve this wonderful architectural detail.
I love that.
And you can see we tried to. It's just a lot of, and that restoring is a lot more work than getting new.
No,
always.
It would have been simpler and faster and
absolutely
less expensive to raise the thing, but also
absolutely.
A shame.
But no, but this project went on for a lot longer than we anticipated, because there was so much stripping and just repairing.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Ugh.
So this is the living room, and again, we wanted to make it feel like a period house. I also wanted to add some flourishes, being an interior designer.
Of course.
I wanted to, add some interesting design elements as well in the space, which you'll see. Here the original walls and ceilings were all plaster. Amazing. So I found a really good plasterer to try to create what the house could have probably looked like back in the day. Obviously adding furniture to make it more comfortable for the way we live today. We were talking earlier how, period chairs are really wonderful to look at, but not to sit in.
We don't have
a little too
18th
upright.
Century posture anymore.
No, we don't.
For better or for worse.
New England torture.
And they died at 35. So.
Yeah,
well, that's a good point.
Exactly. They didn't need to sit in those chairs for too long. But so again, it's a little bit more modernized. And also, a lot of the furnishings that I brought in were the possessions of my clients. So to give the house, to add, obviously, to infuse it with life and give it some soul, and also their personality.
I think and we'll see this throughout, but I think there's such an elegant use of restraint in this project, because as you say, as an interior designer, it was probably very tempting to embellish or decorate.
Absolutely.
And yet this feels very warm and personal and collected, but appropriate.
I was tempted to lacquer the walls, but you'll see. I did have a lacquer.
You had your moment.
I had my lacquer moment. Yeah. Next slide. So okay, this is interesting. So literally the house was, again, it was falling apart. Like all the beams had to be replaced. So instead of removing the beams or exchanging them, we just reinforce them.
That's amazing.
So everything you see there, those are all the 18th century beams that we just reinforced.
That's incredible.
And obviously, I mean, it's the bones, you don't see it, but
Right.
I don't know. I feel really good that we were able to do that.
That is incredible.
Thank
Even
you.
knowing that it doesn't get seen every
You
day,
don't,
but
no.
you can know and your clients can know.
That,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing.
And the fireplaces were all, the mantles were all original, had them restored, but I used, we had to rebuild all the fireplaces. They were falling apart. So again, I sourced local materials. There's a material called Roxbury granite that's local. So we, again, used what materials I thought they would have used
I love
when
that.
they were originally building the house. And as I said before, I did research. I did some research on colonial homes, and there were, I mean, I couldn't help. I mean, I didn't want just like have a room. You can't just have a room with sheetrock walls,
No.
plaster walls. You can't have it. So I added trim where I could, and wainscoting, and try to keep the period, but also I thought just make the house, more attractive.
Yeah.
I thought the house would appreciate that.
Well, it's sort of a way of celebrating
Yeah.
that original design,
Absolutely.
bringing it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Next slide.
This is one of my favorite photos.
Thank you. So this is a view from the living room into the dining room, and you can see, every piece of millwork, every piece of wainscoting was added. That's the staircase we put in, so we're allowed to keep the antique staircase.
Amazing.
And you can see where just the difference. You can see where the floorboards differ because we had to source others. The windows, we actually we restored the windows the best we could. They and we by restoring them, I mean they're only single panel.
Yeah.
They're not very energy efficient, but we have storms we put on them. We have to change them out every season. But it was, just wonderful to have the original glass and all the undulation and
Incredible.
bubbling and so forth.
Incredible.
Next slide. This is a view of the little library. It actually wasn't a
Great
library
space.
before, but I think every house needs a little library.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
This, I think, was just another sitting room. And so added all that millwork, and that's the dining room.
The mix of furniture styles in the library, I mean, it works so well,
Yeah.
again, in this 18th century house, having some 20th century pieces.
And a lot of Gustavian pieces. And I think the Swedish furniture really works well. It weaves very well into colonial houses.
I love that.
And it's light. It's not dark. And I think it has a real freshness to it.
Even the Swedish textiles in the dining room, right?
Yes, those are Joseph Frank textiles, which I love.
Love that.
So
They seem right at home. In
Yeah, well,
colonial.
and I like any opportunity to use Joseph Frank when I can. So there's a little bit more in the house.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Ugh.
So kitchen, those are some of the original cabinets.
Amazing.
So I was very tempted. I wanted to put a new kitchen in. I could have changed the millwork a bit, changed the cabinet details, but this was the kitchen that was put in probably in the 1920s.
Wow.
So we just restored it, and I just added that little Moroccan touch. Why not?
Just a little.
Why not? A little pattern.
I love it.
Yeah.
But again, the
And
restraint.
some modern lighting,
Mhm.
which I thought worked in well.
Great.
I didn't want it to be all period. I think if it was all period, it would be very flat. I
Right.
think it's good to have a little tension.
That
It
speaks
has
to
some
the
modern
renewal
elements.
as well, because
Right.
as you mentioned earlier, houses do evolve and change.
They evolve and change over time, right? As we do.
As we do.
In our taste and the way we dress.
Mhm.
And this is the kitchen dining area. Again, more Swedish pieces. My clients are Swedish, and they are big lovers and collectors. So, but I thought a lot of these pieces just wove in very nicely.
Beautifully.
Yeah, that's my favorite, one of my favorite little nooks in the house.
I love that.
Next slide.
Ugh,
Okay, this is
Oh,
my this is
there's
my-
your lacquer.
This is my lacquer moment. Yeah. So yeah, I couldn't resist having a deep purple lacquered powder room.
Perfect.
It's really nice. It's just a nice little moment, and it's a surprise in the house. And
Yeah.
this the sink actually was original.
Wow.
I'm not sure what the date. I think the date's from the 20s, but we had that restored, and
It's beautiful.
I think it's really interesting piece. Next slide. All right, so there was a part of the house that was it was part of the footprint, and it was more like a garage and a shed, but we were able to use that space and kind of add an addition. So this is the new part of the house, and I guess the first thing to talk about is that Swedish bed. So the house across the street I've been working on for several years, and this antique Swedish bed was installed in that house
Wow.
across the street. And rather than dismantling it and selling it or doing something else with it, we took it and we rebuilt it into this house.
That's incredible.
So again, giving this wonderful, really, truly beautiful piece of cabinetry a whole new life
Amazing.
in its new space. And
That's where I would seek out renewal in this house.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really nice little nook. And I found this very talented decorative painter to just refresh it. And you can see this is where it was originally in the house across the street. And
Wow.
this is the work
That's
sort of in
amazing.
progress. And that's the finished product. But it really is a wonderful really wonderful bed. And I haven't seen many of those.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And the ceiling, I mean, again, it's a tray ceiling, so we did a plank ceiling. And this room feels a little bit. This room is its own little thing, really. I think it's still connected to the house, but it's a much more sort of modern living space.
Yeah.
Next slide. So
I love this.
another Joseph Frank moment
I love
here. So this again talking about sort of reusing and reclaiming things. This was a bay window that was again in the house that we were also restoring, and that was put in the house in the 20s, and I just couldn't bear to see that window go.
No.
So
The lights.
we put that in the new section of the house, and I think it just works beautifully.
That's really cool that you were able to relocate it.
Yeah, and it's a perfect. I thought it was I designed the whole bathroom around that window,
I love it.
and again it's a vintage tub, and again it's a house that we tried to infuse a lot. I wanted to infuse a lot of color and pattern wherever I could,
Love
because
this
I like
room.
color and pattern.
Yes.
Next slide.
Ugh,
So
I know.
yeah,
Those
those are
beds.
really beautiful beds, really beautiful period beds. Again, there's 3 more bedrooms, and these, this is a mixture of things that we sourced and my clients' possessions, and I think it makes it created a really comfortable, lived-in effect.
It looks like it could have always been there, yet it
Yeah.
feels entirely
Yeah.
kind of invigorating.
And there's definitely a nod to the past,
Mhm.
and there's a little bit of, they're definitely maybe not that modern, except for the camo pillows.
The camo pillows are great.
They do it, yeah.
Really
Yeah, it's a
beautiful.
really sweet room.
I love the blanket with the Swedish beds. It's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
those are also the people who I worked for. They're very well traveled, so we had lots of things to work with.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's really
so
wonderful.
and I was really pleased, and I think the house. The house now, I've actually had opportunities to stay in it, and it really, it's like very sound.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It-
so-
It's suited for 21st century life.
Yeah, and hopefully it's happy. Hopefully it's happy.
I'm sure
That's all I care
it
about.
feels happy.
Yeah.
And my clients are happy.
Amazing. It's so beautiful. Okay. I think,
I'm not sure if that's the last
is that
slide
our
or
last?
not.
Oh, there's
Oh,
one.
no, one more. So again, this is just having fun with scale. These are these Swedish modern chairs that
So fun.
we found in an auction, and that's a Swedish rug.
Great
and
Swedish rug there.
Yeah.
I love that.
really great rug, and just worked in things that, like children's a school map. This is like sort of kids hangout room.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love the chest at the end as well.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
a really nice Swedish piece.
Beautiful.
I think that may have been purchased from Ellis Van Breems.
Oh,
I think.
love it.
Are you here?
I think
Is that yours? Sorry? Right. Was it, did that come from your shop? Yes. Yeah.
I love it.
So a lot of them look familiar. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm not sure if that's, maybe one more.
Next slide.
Is there one more?
Ah.
There we go. The end.
Wouldn't be complete without the
The
microphone.
end. So again,
Wonderful.
this is just a little section off of the kitchen, little entry, little mudroom. So every house needs a mudroom.
For sure, especially a colonial New England
Right,
house.
exactly.
New England Spring needs
Yeah.
a button. Okay. Next, please. I think we're ready to turn it over to Philip Mitchell.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you for including me in the panel on Renewal. Steele, just let me know if you can hear me okay. There's a little feedback on my end.
We're hearing you very well.
Perfect. Then we're great.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say how honored I am to be on such a panel with amazing designers and guests, Steele and yourself as well. And I'm just excited about being included in something where people are so passionate about restoring and renewal.
So, Philip, tell us a little bit about this house. And I realized I didn't even think this through ahead of time, but all three of these houses really were taken apart and put back together. If you want to touch on that.
Totally. And this house in particular, obviously, it's ours, so it's super, super personal.
Yes.
And I think it's a perfect example of renewal in the sense that when we purchased the house, we had full intentions of restoring it. It didn't have a designation or a historical designation at the time. And part of the reason why we were attracted to the house and the property was the fact that it was potentially going to be developed into 4 lots and being torn down.
Oh, wow.
And so for us, we just couldn't let that happen. So my husband and I, we swooped in, we purchased the house, and as we started to sort of disassemble it, we realized, and it wasn't evident in any tour that we ever did or any inspection or house inspection, that the house actually was rotten on 3 sides.
Oh my gosh.
A porch had been installed a number of years ago. Flashing had not been installed, and so water literally was coming in 3 sides of the house, but going right outside of the house for years. And so when they started taking things away, even though there was no sign on any of the gyprock or any of the plasterwork, any sign of water damage, there was a lot of damage throughout the house. And so we had to sort of make a decision at that time whether or not we were going to tear it down and start from scratch. And a lot of debate between my husband and myself. And, we bought the house because there was a charm about it. There was a history that was attached to it. And we really thought that it was important for us to try to restore this building. And so we essentially disassembled the house piece by piece, all of the rotten boards, everything throughout the house, numbered, labeled everything, put it in storage lockers within our village here. And then we started to work really closely with our contractor to really put the house back together and trying to reuse as many of the original features that we had, and sometimes moving them forward into other ways. We took old beautiful planked floors and reused them throughout the house. The old glass that was throughout the house. The windows were single paned, and we wanted something to be more practical for ourselves. And so we have new double paned windows that are thermal and fantastic, but all the old glass was reused for decorative transoms in the house. All the the old rotten millwork and beams were sort of milled down locally and used as paneling, or decorative treatments that we would have beadboard or planks. We sort of used those for decorative elements, but we really did rebuild the house from scratch with all new mechanical systems, new structure, in-floor heating, new plumbing, electrical, all those things. So it was definitely a labor of love. And like everybody says, it took way longer, it cost way more. But I think that all of those things, help people to understand that even though that is the case for some things, it really, in the end, you get a product that's unlike no other, as the other examples from the other designers you see as well. There's something about that age and, the charm that comes along with the beauty of, old pieces and old things reused.
And the sense of not getting rid of or saying goodbye to something that is still has so much beauty and function remaining.
And value.
Value. Exactly.
There's this when you look at, I think about when we do new construction and new houses that we design, and often people want the look of something or come to us for the look of something that feels older and authentic. We have clients who buy old barns for the wood that are literally rotten and falling apart, so that we can take that material, we can rework it, and we can put it into a new structure to give it the instant age that a lot of people look for in older properties. So, we were lucky enough to have floors from 1795, and so the beauty is that even the subfloors in this house were so exquisite, and some of them 16 inches wide,
wow.
20 feet long, that those planks mixed in with one another, even though they're, inconsistent and there's a natural undulation to them, there's just this character and authenticity that you can't achieve simply by just taking a new floor and trying to make it look like that.
Amazing. Well, let's step inside. Next slide,
please.
Oh.
So again, we really did try to take cues from the original colonial house that was here. We did a lot of research locally as well. And we wanted to put the house back together in a very respectable way. But we also wanted to move it forward for us. Previously, the house was very different. We've the footprint is pretty much the same, but, we've changed a lot of it in the sense that there wasn't a proper foyer or, cloak closet or powder room even in the original house, because, it was from 1795 and there wasn't even plumbing when it was built, or indoor plumbing. And it's fascinating how we tried to sort of put things back together in a way that would be respectful of how the house would flow, but also work for how we would live in it today. Originally the kitchen was in the basement of the house.
Oh my goodness.
So we had to rethink that because we weren't going to be going up and down stairs, etc. But in the foyer here, we had these beautiful mosaics and amazing artisans that worked on our project. 3 Italian brothers that put down this incredible floor by hand. And all of the floor that you're seeing there isn't even mesh mounted. It's all individual mosaic tiles that were all done by hand.
Wow.
By the most talented tile installers.
I love seeing the year.
Yeah. And that was just a little node to the house. That was our modern twist on it, But you would have seen things like that previously, like little plaques that houses would have had and such. So we put it in the floor.
Love it. Next slide.
You want to go into the next slide, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our dining room, essentially, again, I was saying the house was totally reworked. Our dining room previously was much larger in the house. It was more of a formal dining room. We had 2 or 3 long tables put together, to be honest. It sat like 30 people. And we don't really entertain that way. And when I say that, we entertain on a very regular basis, but not sit down for 30 people.
Right.
And, we opted to sort of rework the layout to have more living space for our living room. We have a nice big sunroom, and our dining room is a little bit more intimate. Still, we can seat 10 if we choose, or 12 we can even squeeze in, but we like 8. I like a round table, and we kept this as sort of the center of the house. It's, I would say, the heart of our house. It's the first thing that you see when you come in. And we started with this beautiful iron mantelpiece that we reclaimed and used for the fireplace in that room. Recreated the moldings that you see there, all the paneling, the antique pine.
Beautiful.
The original staircase, though, is still the original staircase. So that was totally disassembled, taken apart. The handrail, the pickets, the treads, the risers, everything was taken apart and then literally meticulously put back together by, again, I can't say enough, the most incredible craftsmen and trades that worked on our project.
Amazing.
This is also like a room that we use fairly frequently. We like to entertain, in regular times. And it's pretty nice and intimate to have this sort of darker room in our house, but the rest of our house tends to flow a little bit lighter, take more advantage of the views that we have.
Next one.
Yeah. So this is a
lightness.
sort of a portion of our living room, which is a sunroom and one of our favorite spots, filled with light. And, we really did want to be able to try to maximize how you felt in the house with the light and it being very bright and airy. But at the same time, we wanted to be able to, have a collection of things that we have, put together over the years, some new things, some old things. We have antiques, we have custom made pieces. We have an extensive art collection, and we needed definitely walls to sort of house that.
One of the things I love most about this is your art collection and seeing these, contemporary pieces mixed with antique furnishings and other collections.
Totally. And I mean, this is sort of an approach that I've had, or maybe I guess I've organically grown into over time. I inherited, as did my husband Mark, a lot of older pieces, beautiful traditional things. But my tastes tend to sort of veer more to the contemporary. That being said, there's still a sentimental attachment to me for a lot of the things that we have, and maybe they wouldn't be something that I would necessarily go out and purchase today, or could even afford to go out and purchase today, to be honest. But there's a respect that I have for a lot of the things that either my mother or my grandmother, or family people that had a great eye and purchased things along the way that I just can't help but want to incorporate into what we have. And for me, I've never really sort of paid attention to whether or not something should or shouldn't go together. All the things that we have in our house we love for whatever reason. Either it's a sentimental, it's an aesthetic appreciation, it's a memory attached to something. And we really do like to sort of combine those elements to make a space feel fresher. And again, just give it a different feel. This is a house built from 1795 and totally restored from the ground up, but we really have tried to make it a family house that's livable for today and that's comfortable and that people like to spend time in.
And the common thread is that you love all of these things, and that's what makes them work together so well, which I love.
Totally. And I mean, this is how we approach design, not just for ourselves, but for our clients as well. Obviously not everything is beautiful, and even in our house, there are things that are less beautiful, but we put them in places that are less, visible, or things that, they're still part of a grouping of things and they work, but they don't take center stage, like in our living room per se. Maybe they're in a mud room or a less used visited room that you don't see as often. But again, it's a matter of sort of balancing and putting those things all together in such a way that they work together.
Next slide. Ugh, the world's most charming kitchen.
It is a pretty special kitchen. We again, like I said earlier, we had an obstacle in the sense that the original kitchen was in the lower level of our house, or the basement of our house. There was a small kind of servery on this floor, but that wasn't clearly going to work for the way that we live. So again, with reconfiguring the layout of the house, we really wanted to maximize the space that we were going to use for our kitchen. My husband's an incredible cook and baker, and we entertain a lot. And, we really have always had really great kitchens. And in this instance, we really wanted to sort of pull out all the stops and make sure that we designed in every single element that was going to work with him for how he was going to use it. And to be honest with you, how I'm going to use it as the sous chef or the backup person in the scenario. We've also incorporated a bar in our kitchen too, so that I'm right on top of that when it comes to entertaining. But it's also like a place where we often, we're here every day for breakfast, but often the two of us will have dinner here for the two of us. But we will sometimes have another person join us, or a couple or two couples. We've had even up to 6 people. We'll bring 2 chairs into the banquet in the kitchen because it's just intimate and nice, and people love being in the kitchen. And again, we really wanted to take advantage of the view. This great banquet, it sort of looks out onto the ocean, which is lovely.
Amazing.
And even though it's pretty simple in detailing, we wanted to also make sure that, some of the things that we incorporated that, again, respected the history of the house, but sort of moved it forward a bit. Like, some of the nautical lighting that you see up in the ceiling there, we have like a pots and pans rack that's amazing because we use our pots and pans every day, and it's not just decorative. And, I designed this sort of cool light fixture from Urban Electric that they made this for us. That was something that felt like it was appropriate to the house, wasn't too new, but it also didn't feel fussy or dated.
It's perfect.
And it to be like this historical sort of showpiece. We wanted it to be interesting and fun, and so we introduced some interesting fabrics, and again, it was just about sort of putting a little bit of life into the spaces so that it didn't feel so heavy and so historical. And I think there's lots of ways to do that, and we tried to approach that with everything that we looked at in all the spaces of our house.
Next slide. Tranquil.
Yeah, so our bedroom is pretty amazing. I was going to say it's we're lucky because again we're right on the front harbor in our little village, and where the previous master bedroom was, or principal bedroom, was sort of at another end of the house that didn't really take advantage of these open views of the water. So we switched things around upstairs as well. We added more windows because there were less windows, and we just really wanted to take advantage of that view, and we wanted to create a bit of an oasis upstairs that it just sort of takes everything, and it feels like when you're up there and you're sort of on the window seat or in the bed, you feel like you're in the water, almost like on a boat, which is amazing. And again, in this particular instance, we reused all the old material. We milled it down. You can see all the planks on the ceilings here. All of those things sort of add this layer of depth and character to the space that really, at one point during a renovation previous to us, had been stripped from the house. So for us, it was more about putting a lot of that character back into the house, reusing whatever we could, and building on it, to a degree as well, without being, slavish or trying to recreate something exactly. But again, we definitely wanted to respect what was there before it and try to move it forward so that it was, easy to live with today and worked for us, how we lived.
Beautiful. No better renewal than water.
It's true.
That is so beautiful.
This is my bathroom, and I respond to a lot of light things. My husband likes darker, and so in my bathroom, luckily we have each have our own bathrooms in this scenario. My bathroom is lighter, as you can see. It's probably a little more eclectic than what his is, but again, it's I'm a huge bather. So my tub has been positioned so that when I'm in it, I can look out and I can see the sort of the front of our front harbor, or I can look out to the open ocean from the other side, which makes me happy. And there's nothing more, again, rejuvenating and a sense of renewal than having, for me, a bath in the water looking at the ocean. And again, we just wanted to sort of introduce some interesting things here that were different and felt current, but respected the past. We have this amazing Christopher Farr hand block wall covering that's on the walls. That's a very modern pattern or contemporary pattern, but it almost has a William Morris feel when you're in the space.
Absolutely.
We have these amazing shears that Chelsea Textiles embroidered for us, and we were looking for something that was interesting and hand done or hand embroidered, and everything that we came across was more contemporary, or not more contemporary, more traditional. And so we wanted it to be a little bit more interesting. So it's hard to see here, but like the shears have this beautiful little embroidery of almost little modern squares and cubes that are almost in an ombre. They start heavy at the bottom and sort of dissipate to the top. And it's hard to see it, but when you actually experience the space, it's this node to craft and something that's hand done and a respect for that trade, but it also feels modern, which is nice because it sort of moves it forward that much more.
Next slide. It seems like there's a thread of bringing in the handcrafted that makes it feel perfectly appropriate in a historic home across all three projects.
Yeah, and we try to, again, even in our more contemporary projects, a lot of the people that come to us are attracted to the fact that we have an approach that looks at things a little differently. I love anything touched by hand, as I'm sure you can tell. I think that there's something incredibly charming and beautiful and attractive about craft and about things that are very rustic or simple, but made by hand. But I also love complex things also. But, we love to sort of have this play, even in a more contemporary space where, you play on the textiles, you play on the texture of things. We love to use embroideries or antique textiles for that matter. In this case, this is Mark's dressing room, which again, I think was one of your I think it was like one of Veranda's most favorite images of that
popular
year,
images on Instagram. This was a big hit.
And it's so funny because this is his dressing room, and the reason why we have this little single bed in this dressing room is because my husband doesn't like to make the bed, and he likes to have naps in the middle of the afternoon. And so for me, the only salvation was to give him some place to go so that he didn't destroy our bedroom, and I had to make up the bed twice a day. So
hide those naps away.
That came from that practicality. So he often will have a nap here with our dogs in the afternoon, closes, those great draperies, and, it's nice and dark and sort of all consuming for him. But again, he loves dark. And so this is why his dressing room is, dark navy blue. And, we had, again, a whole collection of, local maps that we ended up sort of putting up in that space also. But it really, again, was about sort of having fun with the space and making it definitely personal to him. And but again, it's not necessarily our bedroom that I'm spending a lot of time in, so I don't have to be surrounded by a dark room. But he loves it, and that's the most important part.
Love it. It's like the inside of a
It's
ship.
all about compromise.
And the art studio, and this is Mark's space as well.
So this was Mark's painting studio. This is now our office that we share for the last year and a half. But this is an amazing spot in our house. We have this. An attic space essentially that was unutilized before. We added a shed dormer to the water side, and obviously some more windows. And the whole space was there. We just had to sort of reorganize how it was used and how it was laid out. And the ceilings, they didn't change other than the fact that we just opened up the space and added a shed dormer. But literally, those are all old planks that were decorative. They're decorative now, but they were all rotten planks in the house that we reused in here. And the house has all steel structure obviously in it now, and it's built to last. But we wanted it to feel comfortable, and we wanted it to feel like it was always like this. So funny enough, even though this is one of the newest spaces in our house, it feels like one of the older spaces in our house.
Certainly.
And it's worked beautifully for us. And again, it's helped, like in this time where we had this space. We were lucky to have this space. And, when the pandemic struck and, we were all working from home, we weren't set up really to work from here per se. And so this became our office that we, combined together and we share. And, it's a pretty nice spot considering that it looks over our harbor, and, we open up the windows. There's beautiful breezes in the summer, and it just worked out really lovely for that.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
And next slide. That might be it. We've run a little bit over, but I want to check with Stacy to see, do we have time for a question or two? Okay, great. Anybody have a question? Stacy in front.
Might be a silly question. I want to know if all of those Roman shades in the bedroom are motorized.
That's a great question, Philip.
So no. So so I'm going to be honest with you. All of our window coverings are the most rudimentary, practical window coverings, in the sense that behind all of the Roman blinds that you see there, we actually have wood Venetian blinds that actually come down, that are much easier to control, and we can control the light, or we can close it all off completely to make it dark if we choose. Just because I don't like to put Roman blinds up and down constantly. I like them to look the way that they look, as we all do. And so, we have a whole second layer of wood Venetians that come down on every single window in the house. That's what we've done amazing to make it a little bit easier for us.
That's amazing. I do love the soft swag of a Roman shaded. You can't mess with it when you get it right.
It never looks the same after it goes up and down once.
True. Other questions?
I have a question for Philip.
Yes.
When you had to, don't look so nervous. When you had to reconstruct your stair, did you have to shave down the risers to make the stairs more code compliant, or did you have to remain very authentic? Thank you. I always have a problem with that word. With the height of the treads and the risers.
Well, because we put
Mike, please.
Oh, sorry. Low. Because we put it the second staircase in, this staircase is not supposed to be used. So we were able to leave it as the antique.
Oh,
and not
okay.
modify it.
I was
Yeah.
wondering how you got around
Yeah.
that with it to
Yeah,
get an
exactly.
inspection.
But thankfully, we had space in the back of the house to put a real code compliant staircase.
This is sort of a related question for all three of you, but it's so clear the level of research that you all three had to do in order to renew and restore
Mhm.
all three of these houses. And I guess my question is, is it difficult to explain to a client, give me a minute, I've got a little bit of research to do, or are you expected to know the answer right away? And if you're thrown into a new area, for example, Joy, like you mentioned, how does that work? Does that feel overwhelming or does it excite you?
I have a comfort level with it because I was an architect before I became an interior designer.
That helps tremendously.
So I have a more than general knowledge of construction and its applications, etc. But when working in a foreign country, there is of course a bit of a learning curve about the construction of a wall and the
For
skim
sure.
coat process. And, theirs is very much different from ours in the mud set construction and the sort of percentages of fiber, additions and all of that to basic plaster. There's a whole sort of thing. And then when it's a grade A historic property, there's a whole new set of requirements that need to be met, which I really had to kind of learn quickly and do a lot of additional research beyond the traditional construction practices that I'm already aware of.
I just have such a huge respect and admiration for what that must take, and then finding new vendors. Philip, you mentioned this, but finding the plaster guy or the right stone quarry to get
that takes time.
it's so much time.
But also, to speak to the question, my projects and my clients' homes are so varied that I think they appreciate. I think anyone would appreciate you're doing research on certain periods, whether it's an 18th century house or a 1970s modern house. I think the more work and the more research you do up front, the better it's going to end up.
The outcome.
Yeah.
It seems like, especially perhaps in the last 18 months, there's been this instant gratification. I'm home, I'm stuck at home, I want that new sofa right away. And that is at odds with what the three of you are talking about here.
Yeah.
And getting something right taking 3.5 years.
I think people are used to that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They
I think
are. Good.
Everyone's gotten used to the fact that things
they take time.
take time. I think.
I hope so.
But
I think this has been an interesting exercise to learn that over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of our clients are used to the customization anyway, so they
True.
know that they aren't going to get anything under the sun in 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
So they just know, 12 weeks to 16 weeks has now becomes 36 weeks. And thankfully they have, multiple residences. So it's not like you better finish my house because we're not going to have a place to live. So that's actually, the benefit, I think.
And we're all in it. We're all
Yeah.
experiencing the same thing now. It's not like you have access to appliances. You have a
But
special
I don't. For something.
Yeah.
Sub-zero connection.
Yeah.
If she does,
Puccini
Philip,
is,
she's going to let us know after the
yeah.
talk.
Do you think
We're doing Italian appliances made from Florence for the Italy project. That's the only reason why we're going to have a stove, a cooker.
this came up in one of the conversations yesterday, but there's joy to the process. There's joy right here, thank God. But
And sometimes this is all you're going to get if you're waiting on something to show up.
but I think
I'm
ultimate joy.
That's it.
I bring the joy.
That's it.
But I hope that clients are realizing that what they say, it's the journey, not the destination, right? So there's joy in the anticipation and the I don't know. I hope to see more of that. I don't like this instant gratification 2-day ship culture that I sometimes see growing up around. But
I don't know. I think clients are understanding. Everyone, as Philip said, is in it together. When that container ship ran amok in Egypt, everybody,
everything was on it.
everything was
building.
on it.
Every material.
all the appliances.
And even if it wasn't, say it was,
Might
right?
as well have been on there.
Buy yourself an extra 6 months
yeah,
if you need to.
yeah.
But
all of your furnishings are
yeah,
in the
sorry, but
Suez.
remember that container? Yeah.
It was a big ship.
Yeah, it's a big ship. There's a lot of stuff on there. Yeah.
Other questions?
I noticed that many of the projects featured round dining tables, and I'm curious, and I love round dining tables myself. Is there an ideal diameter? Is there an ideal size? How do you decide, what dimension makes a good conversation versus I can't quite talk to the person?
That's a
I
great
can tell
question.
I think 60 inches is a good size because you can get 6 people comfortably around it. When you go to 72, you can have 8 chairs, but you're a little bit too far, I think. You really can't talk across.
You need more floral arrangement or largest
Yeah.
floral arrangement.
That's what I was
Eat up
thinking
some
about.
of that
You have to
space.
get a
Yeah, or
larger
very
floor.
large
Right,
silver
right.
service.
I
Yeah.
think it depends also how you're going to use it.
Mm.
You know, at the end of the day, if you wanted to try to be a little more flexible, there's amazing tables out there today. We have one, in fact, the leaves are sort of on the outside of the table rather than sort of part of it. So it can go from 60 to, 90, and it works nicely, to sort of expand easily.
It's like a mechanical table, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Those are really cool.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Oh my God, the pillow chop. I mean, I'm so
Becky had
glad
to
to
go
see other like design elements, start to really have their light. Like chinoiserie, I've always loved. I love to see that sort of reemergence of chinoiserie. If I never see a chop pillow, sorry, Philip Mitchell,
Sort of in the back.
I'll be happy.
What you said, we were talking about
I
it before.
I grew up with a decorator mother, and all she ever did was chop a pillow to make sure that it was down. Always.
And I always say I hate chop pillows because, like onions, they make me cry.
We were talking about this earlier, right, Steele? And you chop them on the side.
Yes,
I punch them. I punch them in the gut. What do you do with them?
I throw them up in the air wherever they land.
yeah.
It's a cushion. It's a cushion.
I cinch in the waist. It's like a habit. Like I don't know why.
Cinch the waist.
I just think that the chop pillow adds a sort of false architecture to a space and really just is very distracting
Interesting.
with your envelope.
An architect's eye, for sure.
Where did the chop pillow come from?
That's a good
Whoever
question.
started it will never take credit for it.
I think we could probably look back and see.
Is there something to making sure it is down? Like the chop is to
A 45
Test
degree
the-
angle.
test the material? I don't know. But
I mean, I'm just talking from the late 70s, early 80s, when I experienced a mother who would chop the pillows, but making sure that they were down was part of why she did what she did.
I love that.
Fluffing them up constantly.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot today about moving historical buildings forward. One of the things that I've always found very difficult in trying to achieve that is things like the light switches, the radiators, those sort of things. Often they aren't compliant with electricity today and so on. So I wondered if you just talk about how you get around that. I noticed Philip had some great radiators as well.
And grates on the air vents.
Air vents, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also kind of old school in the sense that I know everybody likes to conceal everything that they can today, and I totally appreciate that. And like somebody was asking earlier about the light switches, or not the light switches, the shades, and if they were on an automation system. I like to simplify things a lot. We're in an area where sometimes you lose power infrequently during storms and things like that. So I like the authenticity of what is. And so even though we have new reproduction radiators from the UK, they still look like beautiful old radiators, and there's a charm to that. And I don't mind working around that. And I just like the actual the way that they heat, and that you can control rooms easily, and they're quite clean rather than sort of a forced air system or a newer system like that. And again, I think that light switches are light switches. They're a necessary evil. They're part of what we do. I'm not a huge fan, and you'll notice in my house particularly, there is no fancy light system because I'm like an old person. I like a toggle switch, and I like to be able to turn on the light very easily, and I don't like it to be complicated.
I love it.
Just is what it is, right?
Yeah, clients really just need to understand that renewal takes time. When working on an older home, renewal takes time.
Renewal takes time.
It's not like call Amazon Prime and expect it delivered 3 days. It's a commitment. They respect their property. They want you to respect it, and newness takes time.
Mm.
Well, so I think it's okay to, when you're doing historic preservation or renovating a historic house, I think it's okay to adopt the latest and greatest technology, right? Especially if you want that house to function properly and to be comfortable and warm, you know, whether it's radiant heat or, I mean, I think as long as it's concealed, I think, you know, that's fine.
Yeah. It does ensure its longevity. And that's obviously better than.
And it's doing a favor for the house, I think.
Right. That's interesting. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Even the ghosts will be happy.
Even the ghosts.
Well, we hope.
Love it. I love it. Any other questions?
Ghosts don't. They like cold.
They like cold. Yours don't.
Gary, another question from Gary.
I wanted to ask Philip Mitchell about the shingles on the roof of his house and what decisions he made about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what's called an EnviroShake roof on our house, and it's a composite material that's 99% recycled material. It has a lifetime guarantee, and the beauty about it is that it's maintenance free, and it actually does over time weather slightly. And when I say that, the color ages a bit, and we've installed ours sort of in a staggered undulated pattern so that now it actually reads as a cedar roof, just like our neighbors next door who have a historical antique cedar roof. For us, we figured, we didn't want to have to replace our roof within the next, 15 or 20 years. And even though it was a little bit pricier than a regular cedar roof, this was an amazing alternative for us. It still fit within the architectural sort of integrity of the house, but it also feels like cedar, which we loved.
That is amazing. I'm so glad that you asked that question. I've been looking for alternatives to cedar shake that might last a little longer.
Yeah,
and look as good.
Listen, cedar, there's maintenance with cedar over time, and I love cedar, don't get me wrong, but unless you're in the perfect condition where there are no trees overhead, where you're not going to get lots of moss growing on it all of the time, it can be nightmarish.
Absolutely.
If I may, I missed the name of that substitute material for cedar.
It's called EnviroShake.
EnviroShake.
EnviroShake. An energy drink.
Yeah, right. Protein shake.
Any other? Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. I thought there was another question. Other questions? Well, thank you all so much for joining me. We easily could have kept you all afternoon.
Thank you, Steele.
Fascinating. And thank you for the beautiful work that you're doing to preserve these old buildings.
Thank you, Steele.
Thank you.